The Hall of Orbits shimmered under a ceiling made of pure glass, where stars beyond the station moved like silent witnesses. Inside that vast chamber, hundreds of alien delegates sat in a perfect circle, each one representing a world older and more advanced than Earth. At the very center, one human stood alone. His name was Rook Calder, and today, he would either make history or become an execution broadcast. Every movement in the hall carried weight. Even the whisper of Rook's boots against the polished black floor echoed too loud. Cameras hovered like silent insects, their red eyes blinking as they streamed the event to every corner of the galaxy. On the upper tiers, alien journalists murmured to one another, their voices blending into an uneasy hum of excitement and disdain. Human Delegate Rook Calder announced the voice of the Arbiter. You are accused of breaching the ceasefire treaty between the VYR Dominion and the Orican Guild. You stand charged with espionage, data theft, and sabotage of peace efforts. How do you plead? Rook kept his head high. Not guilty. And you know that. Laughter rippled through the alien rows. Harsh, metallic, cruel. The humans' calm defiance was strange to them. Most species broke quickly under the Council's gaze. But Rook was no ordinary diplomat. He was a former pilot turned envoy, a man who had seen death in the cold vacuum and learned to keep his composure where others would panic. The Arbiter's silver mask tilted slightly, unreadable. Then explain why stolen schematics of Orican defense grids were found in your quarters. Rook looked up at the holographic projection of the so-called evidence. Glowing blue files hovered above his head, filled with codes and signatures. Too perfect, he thought. Too clean. Real espionage always left smudges, missing trails, mistakes. This was flawless, and that made it a lie. I request full chain-of-source verification, Rook said, voice steady. Gasps rolled through the chamber. No one challenged the Arbiter directly. You are not in a position to request anything. The Arbiter replied coldly. You are here to face judgment. Rook took a single step forward. Then let me face it with truth. The tension crackled. Guards shifted their stances, their weapons humming with restrained energy. One drone floated closer, its injector needle preparing a truth serum probe. The crowd leaned in, everyone waiting to see the human reduced, broken, begging. But Rook didn't move. He simply looked at the Arbiter and said, You're scared. A sharp murmur swept across the tiers. The Arbiter froze. Of what, human? Of what happens if I prove you wrong? The drone lowered. Its mechanical arm twitched. And then, before anyone could react, a clear voice echoed from the upper gallery. A voice that cut through the thick silence like lightning through glass. Stop this trial. Every eye turned. A tall figure stood behind the observation rail. Her skin was pale blue, faintly glowing under the lights. Her hair shimmered silver white like threads of starlight, and her gown seemed woven from liquid light itself. Her presence silenced even the guards. She raised her hand. By galactic law, I invoke the Pact of Aegis. Shock rippled through the room. The Arbiter's metallic mask tilted sharply. You, who are you to speak? The woman stepped forward, unflinching. Lyra Vey, truth analyst, cultural envoy of the 9th Division. And under the ancient code of Aegis, I declare the accused under my bond of protection. Chaos followed. Delegates stood, shouting, translating the ancient term in their languages. The Pact of Aegis, nearly forgotten, was one of the oldest galactic traditions, predating even the Council itself. If invoked, it bound two individuals together under shared legal and moral protection. Neither could be harmed until the truth of the case was proven in full, under public light. Rook stared at her in disbelief. He didn't know her. Not by name, not by face. And yet, in one moment, this alien woman had shattered the Council's control over his fate. The Arbiter slammed his staff against the floor. The pact cannot be invoked by outsiders without verification. Lyra's voice remained calm but firm. Then verify it. Skim my neural signature. You will find the bond registered. I placed it before this trial began. The hall fell silent again. The scanners confirmed her words. A faint golden thread of energy flickered between her and Rook, proof of a mutual link. Rook took a slow breath. He didn't understand why she was helping him, but one thing was certain, the game had just changed. Around them, whispers grew into a storm of outrage and curiosity. The Council's guards hesitated, uncertain. The Arbiter could only glare down from his throne, trapped by the very laws he claimed to uphold. Lyra turned her eyes toward Rook. "You will not die today," she said quietly, so only he could hear. And for the first time since he stepped into that chamber, Rook Calder allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity's story wasn't over yet. The Hall of Orbits emptied slowly after the hearing, but tension still lingered like static in the air. Rook stood under guard, his wrists bound in shimmering blue restraints that pulsed faintly with every heartbeat. Across the vast chamber, Lyra Vey, his unexpected savior, spoke rapidly with a circle of council mediators, her voice low but sharp. He couldn't hear the words, but the way she moved told him everything. She was fighting for time. The Arbiter had granted a temporary suspension of judgment, invoking the Pact of Aegis clause, but that only bought them hours, maybe less. The council wanted results. Either proof of Rook's innocence or a new excuse to destroy humanity's fragile reputation in galactic politics. The guards escorted him through a maze of corridors made of black crystal, walls glowing faintly with internal veins of light. Everything here was alive with data, recording, judging, calculating. When they reached his holding chamber, the guards left without a word. The cell door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. He sat on the cold bench and let the silence swallow him. His mind replayed every detail of the trial, the forged files, the drone's sudden malfunction, Lyra's impossible intervention. Why would an alien risk everything to save him? Especially when declaring the pact tied her fate directly to his. If he was executed, she would be stripped of her rank and possibly imprisoned herself. A soft chime broke the silence. The door opened, and Lyra stepped inside. The guards didn't stop her. They wouldn't dare now. Rook stood. "You shouldn't be here. I invoked the pact. I have to be here," she replied simply. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed urgency. The Arbiter's Council is split. Some want to void the treaty with Earth entirely. Others suspect a deeper plot. You were framed, human. I saw it in the data flow. Rook frowned. How? Lyra moved closer, her silver hair catching the soft blue light. I'm a truth analyst. I study emotional residue in coded transmissions, patterns left behind by consciousness. The evidence they used against you has no organic signature. It was built entirely by machine. Meaning someone wanted this to look perfect, Rook said. Exactly. Her hands brushed across the air, projecting a small hologram of the data fragments she had extracted. Strange looping symbols spun above her palm. These encryption marks don't belong to any known faction in the Council. They're ghost codes, patterns used by the Quiet Forge. Rook's eyes narrowed. He'd heard the name whispered before. A weapons syndicate that sold chaos disguised as peace. You think they're behind this? Lyra nodded. They need conflict between the VYR and the Oricans to keep their factories running. And you were the perfect scapegoat. A human mediator who could be blamed for sabotage on both sides. Rook exhaled slowly. Then we need proof. That's what I intend to find, Lyra said. But once I start digging, they'll come for both of us. The pact protects you only within the station. If we leave, then we make it quick, Rook interrupted. Where do we start? Lyra hesitated. There's an archive buried beneath the diplomatic wing. The Garden of Memory. It's supposed to store public records, but I've traced shadow transmissions through its core servers. If the Quiet Forge planted data, it'll be there. Rook managed a thin smile. You always this reckless? Lyra met his gaze, unblinking. You humans call it courage, don't you? For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension between them shifted, no longer strangers, but reluctant allies bound by circumstance and law. Rook broke the silence first. Then we go tonight. Lyra nodded. At the second eclipse cycle, security will reset for maintenance. We'll have 8 minutes before they notice the intrusion. As she turned to leave, Rook called after her. Lyra, why did you do it? The pact, I mean. You risked everything. She paused at the doorway, her back to him. Because I've watched too many species condemn humans out of fear, she said softly. You remind the galaxy of what it's forgotten. That courage isn't measured in rank or power, but in how far one will go to stand for truth. The door closed behind her, leaving Rook alone again. But now the silence felt different, alive, pulsing with purpose. He stared at the faint glow of the restraints on his wrists, then clenched his fists until the light flickered. 8 minutes. One chance. And this time, humanity wouldn't bow. The station's night cycle began, and the endless lights of the Hall of Orbits dimmed into a softer hue. From the observation decks, the twin stars of Vetra burned gold and crimson, casting ribbons of light that shimmered across the station's metallic hull. Inside his dim holding cell, Rook Calder waited. Every second felt longer than the last. When the inner wall clock blinked to the second eclipse cycle, the restraints around his wrists powered down, just as Lyra had promised. The door slid open without sound. She stood there, wrapped in a cloak of black filament that blended with the shadows. In her hand, a small pulse scrambler flickered. "Time's short," she whispered. "Follow close. No lights." The security grid's blind for 6 minutes. Rook nodded. They slipped into the corridor like ghosts. The walls pulsed faintly, alive with bioluminescent veins, but the surveillance eyes that usually watched were dark. Somewhere deep in the structure, a maintenance drone hummed in idle suspension. They moved fast through deserted diplomatic wings. Rook's old instincts returned, quiet breathing, light steps, scanning corners. His pilot's nerves still worked even after years behind negotiation tables. Lyra kept pace easily, her movements deliberate and graceful. "Garden of Memory is 4 decks down," she murmured, tapping her wrist device. "The data conduits run beneath the meditation chambers. We'll use access tunnel Delta 7. "Convenient," Rook said dryly. "You sound like someone who's done this before." Her lips curved slightly. Truth requires trespass more often than law allows. They descended through a narrow spiral shaft, where translucent roots of living circuits grew through the walls like veins of glowing glass. The hum of the station's core vibrated faintly beneath their feet. The Garden of Memory wasn't what Rook expected. It wasn't stone or archive stacks. It was alive. A cathedral of light and growth, where each leaf and vine stored fragments of history. Holographic petals drifted in the air like fireflies, projecting moments from the past, wars, treaties, births of civilizations. Lyra stopped near a massive tree of data crystal. "This is it," she whispered. "The garden's central mind. All transmissions pass through here before they're indexed. If the Quiet Forge forged evidence against you, it left a signature somewhere inside this system." Rook crouched beside her as she connected her wristband to the interface. Lines of code appeared, moving like waves across her palm. "Accessing trace memory sectors," she said. "Look for any anomalies." Rook scanned the flickering lines, recognizing none of it, but pretending to keep up. He trusted her instincts. He didn't trust the silence. It was too perfect, too absolute. Then, faintly, metal on metal. A sound. "Someone's here," Rook said quietly. Lyra froze. "Impossible." The grid still. Before she could finish, a light cut across the chamber. From behind a holographic projection stepped 3 figures, armored in matte black suits, faces hidden behind mirrored visors. The crest on their shoulders was unmistakable, a fractured circle. "The Quiet Forge," Rook muttered. The lead merc lifted a weapon, its barrel humming. "Hand over the data link, Analyst Vey. You were warned to stop." Lyra didn't move. "You'll have to take it." They fired. Bolts of compressed energy slashed through the air. Rook dove behind a memory pillar, glass shards spraying as a projection shattered into 1,000 fading stars. Lyra rolled behind another column, drawing a compact plasma blade from her belt. "Your species isn't worth saving, human," one of the mercs shouted as they advanced. "Then you'll hate what happens next," Rook snapped. He grabbed a fallen energy pike from a ceremonial stand, powered it up, and swung. The blade's hum filled the hall as he struck the nearest attacker, sparks scattering like fireflies. Lyra darted forward, her blade a streak of blue light. She moved with precision, cutting power lines, disarming her opponent, using the environment instead of brute force. Rook fought rougher, human style, every strike messy but effective. When the last merc fell, the chamber filled with the sound of crackling energy. One of the damaged pillars flickered, revealing fragments of encrypted data beneath. Lyra moved closer, scanning the exposed code. "There," she whispered, hidden within the memory lattice. A ghost transmission looped from the Quiet Forge's relay. Coordinates embedded in the metadata. Rook looked over her shoulder. "Coordinates to what?" "Not what," she said grimly. "Who?" "The one who authorized your setup." The screen displayed a name, Regent Marshal Sale. Rook clenched his fists. The same one who led the trial. Lyra disconnected the device, slipping it into her cloak. Now you see why they wanted you gone. They're protecting their own. Alarms began to blare. The security grid had reset early. Red warning lights bled through the chamber walls. Time's up, Rook said. They ran through the glowing corridors as drones poured from the ceiling, voices shouting orders in alien dialects. Behind them, the Garden of Memory collapsed into lockdown. Rook glanced at Lyra. Now what? She met his gaze, breathing hard. Now, human, we bring the truth straight to the Council's heart. And in that moment, despite the danger, Rook smiled. Humanity finally had a voice, and this time, the galaxy would have to listen. The alarm klaxon screamed across the upper levels of the station, echoing through steel corridors that vibrated with panic and command orders. The once quiet halls of diplomacy had turned into a hive of flashing red lights and armed patrols. Rook Calder and Lyra Vey darted between maintenance shafts, staying one step ahead of the lockdown barriers that slammed shut behind them. Security teams are sealing Deck 12, Lyra warned, glancing at the hollow map on her wrist. We've got 5 minutes before every route to the Council spire is locked. Then we run, Rook replied, his breathing steady despite the sprint. I didn't come all this way to get cornered by politicians with laser sticks. Lyra almost smiled, even as she hacked another door panel with a flick of her wrist. You humans and your strange confidence. You act like fear doesn't exist. Rook shrugged. Fear exists. I just never give it the map. The door opened into a narrow bridge overlooking the central plasma conduit, a roaring river of light flowing through transparent tubes beneath their feet. Below, the entire power core pulsed like the heart of a star. Crossing at min-exposure, one wrong move, and they'd be spotted instantly. We'll never make it across unseen, Lyra said quietly. Rook scanned the railing and pointed to a maintenance railcar suspended underneath the bridge. Then we ride under it. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. They climbed over the edge, dropping onto the narrow railcar as it hummed faintly from stored energy. Rook reconnected the manual control wires, sparks jumping across his hands. You know how to drive this thing? Lyra asked. Same principles as an Earth shuttle, Rook muttered. Except it doesn't explode if I sneeze. The railcar jolted forward, descending into the plasma glow. From above, security drones swept the bridge but missed the dark underside where they clung. As the railcar glided through the station's core tunnel, Lyra leaned close to Rook, her voice barely audible over the hum. When I saw your trial file, I knew something was wrong, she said. The Quiet Forge's fingerprints were all over it, but I couldn't prove it alone. The moment I invoked the pact, I became their next target too. Rook kept his eyes ahead. You still saved me. What? Lyra hesitated, her silver eyes reflecting the plasma light. Because humanity reminds the galaxy of something it's forgotten. How to fight when the odds are impossible. You people burn too bright to be erased. Before Rook could respond, the railcar jolted violently. A bolt of energy slammed into the tunnel wall beside them. Drones, 3 of them, had spotted the heat signature. Their cannons glowed, preparing another shot. Hold on, Rook shouted, wrenching the manual lever. The railcar swung hard to the right, scraping sparks along the wall. One drone exploded against the tunnel's ceiling, another clipped a support strut and spun out of control. The third locked onto them, closing in fast. Lyra ripped a panel from the car's side, exposing an energy cable. Overloaded. Rook grinned. You think like a human now. He yanked the cable free, jammed it into the rail system, and a pulse of blue lightning surged down the track. The railcar shot forward at impossible speed, leaving the last drone engulfed in the plasma wake. They crashed through an emergency maintenance gate, sparks and debris flying everywhere. When the car finally screeched to a stop, both of them tumbled to the floor, coughing from smoke and adrenaline. Lyra laughed softly. You're insane. Probably, Rook replied, standing and brushing off his jacket. But it worked. They had reached Dock 7, a massive loading bay carved deep into the station structure. Hundreds of cargo pods hovered in rows, guarded by mechanical loaders and workers unaware of the chaos above. Lyra's wristband flickered with new data, coordinates she had pulled from the archive. There, she said, pointing to a freight container stamped with the code QF-7A. That's the shipment. The Quiet Forge's delivery. Rook's expression hardened. And that's what they're protecting. They approached quietly, using the cover of crates until they reached the massive container. Its seal shimmered with advanced encryption, far beyond any diplomatic tech. Lyra began decoding it while Rook scanned the surroundings for guards. The lock hissed open, revealing a cargo hold filled not with weapons, but with chorus nodes. Sleek, spherical machines humming with faint light. What are these? Rook asked. Lyra's eyes widened. Signal replicators. They can mimic any weapon discharge in space. Launch one between two fleets, and each side will think the other fired first. Rook's voice turned grim. Automatic war. Before they could react, a familiar metallic voice echoed from behind. Impressive deduction. Human. Rook spun around, weapon raised. Standing at the end of the bay was Regent Marshal Sale, flanked by armored guards, his emerald skin gleaming under the lights. You were supposed to die quietly, Sale said, his tone calm, almost amused. But perhaps this spectacle will serve as your final lesson. Some truths are not meant for fragile species like yours. Rook stepped forward. You framed me. You wanted humanity blamed for a war you were secretly funding. Sale smirked. History is written by survivors. The bay's alarms flared again, warning of lockdown. Lyra glanced at Rook, whispering, We can't win this fight here. Maybe not, Rook said. But we can show the galaxy who's really pulling the trigger. He aimed his wrist communicator at the crates and transmitted their live feed directly into the Council's public broadcast network. Across the station and across dozens of worlds, the image of Sale's secret shipment filled every screen. As Sale's guards closed in, Rook's voice echoed through the speakers. This is Rook Calder of Earth. The Quiet Forge is real, and your war is a lie. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The Council spire was burning with panic. Hollow feeds from every corner of the station broadcasted Rook Calder's message, his voice echoing through every chamber, corridor, and diplomatic suite. The image of the chorus nodes, machines built to start wars, flickered across galactic networks in real time. Delegates screamed, comm channels overloaded, and the quiet veil of lies that had cloaked the peace talks began to rip apart. But in Dock 7, chaos had just begun. The air filled with the hum of approaching engines as a squadron of armed drones swarmed into the cargo bay, weapons locking onto Rook and Lyra Vey. The light from the exposed chorus nodes pulsed like angry stars. Regent Marshal Sale stood at the far end of the dock, his expression cold, a small transmitter glowing in his palm. You think truth will save you, Sale said. His voice was amplified, echoing through the bay. The moment your broadcast began, the Forge activated the contingency. In 5 minutes, every chorus node on this station will ignite. Lyra's hand froze over her control pad. If those detonate, they'll simulate an attack from both factions. Every defense fleet will respond in kind. Exactly, Sale replied. By the time anyone realizes it was all an illusion, the real war will already have begun. Rook moved between her and Sale's guards. Then let's change your ending. He pulled the weapon from his belt, a compact Earth-made rail pistol, and fired. The shot cracked like thunder, taking one of Sale's guards off his feet. Energy bolts lit the bay as drones opened fire. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Lyra dove behind a crate, her cloak smoldering, while Rook rolled to cover beside her. This isn't a fight we can win, she shouted. No, Rook gritted his teeth. But it's one we can survive long enough to finish. Lyra's fingers danced across her wrist device. If I can link the chorus node network to the Council's live relay, I might be able to invert the broadcast, turn every detonation command into a confession feed. Translation? Rook asked. They'll expose themselves, not us. Do it. Rook popped up from cover, firing 3 more shots. A drone exploded in midair, spinning into a wall. The rail pistol overheated, whining as the charge depleted. He ducked again, just as a pulse blast scorched the floor inches from his head. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly as her device synced with the chorus network. I need 60 seconds. Buy me that time. Rook smiled grimly. 60 seconds is a lifetime. He dashed from cover, drawing the fire away from her. His movements were sharp, instinctive, human reflexes honed by desperation. A blast grazed his shoulder, burning through the fabric of his jacket. He ignored the pain, grabbed a loose cable, and whipped it around a drone's neck, yanking it down before kicking another aside. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. Almost there. 40%. Sale watched from above, sneering. You're only delaying the inevitable. Maybe, Rook yelled back, but you'll remember who delayed it. He dove behind a steel support beam, bullets of light hammering the air. Lyra's device beeped frantically. 10 seconds. Then, a sudden click, the sound of a weapon being cocked behind her. A guard had circled around, raising his plasma rifle at her back. Lyra, Rook roared. Without thinking, he charged. The shot fired. It missed her, but hit him square in the side. The blast hurled him against the floor. Pain exploded through his body. His vision blurred, the world fading in flashes of red and blue light. Lyra turned just in time to see Rook collapse. She screamed, a sound that tore through the battle like a storm, and slammed her hand down on the activation key. A pulse of pure light erupted from the chorus nodes. It wasn't an explosion, it was revelation. The air shimmered with data streams, broadcasting Sale's hidden transmissions, his deals with the Quiet Forge, his recorded orders to forge the evidence against Rook. Every word, every lie, was transmitted across the galactic net. Screens across the station filled with his voice. Frame the human. Blame Earth. When chaos begins, the Forge profits. Sale froze, staring in horror as the words looped on repeat. Around him, his own guards hesitated, some lowering their weapons, others backing away. Lyra knelt beside Rook, pressing her hand against his wound. Stay with me, she pleaded. It worked, Rook. You did it. He gave a weak smile. Told you. Humans are hard to erase. The bay filled with the sound of sirens as Council enforcement ships docked. Armed officers flooded in, surrounding Sale and his remaining men. The Regent Marshal's voice broke into a snarl. You think this ends me? The Forge has roots deeper than law. Lyra looked up at him with cold, furious eyes. Then we'll keep digging until the galaxy sees them burn. Sale lunged, but a blast from a Council officer dropped him before he reached her. Lyra held Rook's hand tightly as medics rushed forward. The chorus nodes flickered one last time, then dimmed, their purpose fulfilled. As she looked down at the human who had risked everything for truth, one thought echoed in her mind, one she would carry long after the smoke cleared. Humanity might be fragile, but it was unbreakable. The medbay smelled faintly of ozone and disinfectant. Silver lights pulsed in slow rhythm along the ceiling, synchronized with the artificial heartbeat monitors. Rook Calder lay on a narrow bed, wrapped in layers of regenerative film. His breathing was shallow, but steady. Beside him, Lyra Vey sat silently, her eyes fixed on the monitor as if willing it to keep beating. It had been 30 hours since the exposure of Regent Marshal Sale and the Quiet Forge conspiracy. The entire Galactic Council was in uproar. Fleets stood down, treaties were frozen, and the word Earth had become the center of every conversation across half the known systems. Yet inside that sterile room, none of that mattered. Rook's voice was faint but laced with his usual stubbornness. You should be resting, Lyra. Her head snapped toward him. His eyes were open now, dim but alive. Relief crossed her face like a sunrise. You don't get to tell me what to do, human. You almost died. He smiled weakly. Almost doesn't count. She leaned closer. You lost a lot of blood. That plasma wound nearly destroyed your lung. The medics say you shouldn't even be conscious. Guess humans never read the rules. Lyra shook her head, but couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. Even near death, you make jokes. That's what keeps us alive, he replied. For a while, they sat in silence. Outside the medbay window, the station rotated slowly above the twin stars. Distant flashes of diplomatic vessels arriving and departing lit the darkness. The galaxy was changing, but the calm here felt almost sacred. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. The council is meeting again. They want your testimony before the High Assembly. Sale's confession went viral across every channel. The Quiet Forge's networks are collapsing. And the peace talks? Rook asked. Suspended, she said. But this time, not out of hatred. The delegates want to build new terms, ones that include Earth as a permanent member of the Council. Rook closed his eyes, exhaling softly. About time humanity stopped being treated like children. Lyra studied him. You realize you're the reason that happened. You exposed them. He shook his head. No, we did. I just happened to be the loud one with bad aim. A small smile touched her lips. You're more than that, Rook. You changed how they see you. How they see us. He turned his head to meet her gaze. And you changed how I see them. How I see this whole mess. You could have walked away. You didn't have to save me. Lyra hesitated, then reached out, her blue fingers brushing his hand. I didn't do it for the council. I did it because I saw something in you that's rare in this galaxy. You fight for truth even when you have nothing to gain. Rook's pulse monitor quickened slightly. You sound like someone who believes in humans. I do, she said quietly. And maybe in you. Before he could respond, the medbay door slid open. A tall, imposing figure entered, Supreme Arbiter Kale, his metallic mask reflecting the cold light. Ambassador Calder, the Arbiter said, his voice deep and deliberate. You've caused the greatest scandal in Council history. Entire alliances tremble because of your actions. Rook pushed himself upright with a wince. You're welcome. Kale's mask tilted slightly, perhaps amusement, perhaps disbelief. Arrogant as always, humans. But the Council owes you. The Quiet Forge's leaders are being hunted across 6 sectors. However, he paused, glancing at Lyra. Their influence runs deep. They will strike again. And when they do, the Council will need someone who understands both courage and chaos. Rook frowned. You're asking me to come back? Kale nodded. Not as a defendant. As an envoy. A liaison between Earth and the Council's new security division. Consider it a chance to finish what you started. Rook hesitated, looking toward Lyra. Her expression told him everything. Hope, fear, and something deeper. If I accept, Rook said slowly, I don't work alone. She comes with me. Kale turned his gaze to Lyra. You are brilliant. Reckless. Dangerous to every rule we stand by. But perhaps that's what the galaxy needs. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Very well. The pact of Aegis between you two remains in force. You'll operate together, human and alien, bound by law and choice. When the Arbiter left, silence returned. Rook looked at Lyra. Looks like we're partners again. She smiled faintly. You mean we ever stopped? He chuckled, wincing slightly. Then it settled. We're not diplomats anymore, Lyra. We're troublemakers with permission. Outside the medbay window, the stars burned brighter than ever. The galaxy watched, waiting. Somewhere, the Quiet Forge was already rebuilding, whispering in the dark. But for now, for this moment, there was peace. And for the first time since the trial began, Rook Calder felt something rare in the cold corridors of power. Hope. The High Council Tribunal Hall had never been this full. Delegates from over 200 worlds crowded the tiered balconies, their faces a tapestry of color, texture, and species. Hollow cameras hovered above the chamber, broadcasting every heartbeat of the session to billions across the galaxy. For once, there were no jeers when a human entered. Rook Calder walked to the center of the platform, his dark formal coat pressed, the burn scar on his side still faintly visible beneath the collar. Lyra Vey followed him, dressed in the ceremonial silvers of her division, her eyes calm but watchful. When the echo of their footsteps faded, Supreme Arbiter Kale rose from his elevated throne. The light glinted off his mask as his deep voice rolled through the hall. Today, this tribunal recognizes 2 individuals whose defiance prevented the bloodiest war in recent history. Yet the same act exposed the rot festering beneath our peace. Whispers spread through the chamber. Rook remained silent. Lyra's gaze stayed locked on the Arbiter. Kale continued. The Quiet Forge has fallen. Its leaders captured, its assets seized. But their shadow remains. They called humanity a tool. Unpredictable, emotional, primitive. They feared what they could not control. Rook stepped forward. They were right to fear us, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. Because humanity doesn't fight for conquest or power. We fight when someone decides truth is inconvenient. We fight when the galaxy forgets that peace means nothing without honesty. Silence. Every delegate leaned in. Even Kale didn't interrupt. Rook went on. When I stood on this floor last, I was accused of treason. I was a scapegoat, easy to blame, easy to erase. But I learned something in that cell. Peace isn't built by those who play safe. It's built by those willing to stand alone until someone else joins them. He turned toward Lyra. And she did. Lyra took a step beside him, her voice soft but resonant. I invoked the Pact of Aegis that day not just to save a life, but to remind this council of the law it had forgotten. The Quiet Forge used fear to divide us. Humans, VYR, Oricans, Different bodies, same weakness. But perhaps now, we share the same strength. Her words rippled through the crowd like wind over water. Even hardened diplomats shifted in their seats, their expressions thawing from suspicion to reflection. Kale inclined his head slightly. "And what would you have us do, Ambassador Calder?" Rook met his masked gaze. "Make the Pact of Aegis more than a legend. Let it stand as a new foundation. Human and alien, bound not by blood, not by power, but by shared will. No more junior races, no more superior species. Just voices equal under one sky." For a moment, the vast chamber was utterly still. Then, one by one, the representatives began to rise. The Arbiter's staff struck the floor 3 times, signaling unanimous approval. "The proposal is accepted," Kale declared. "Effective immediately, the Pact of Aegis will be reinstated as a living treaty among all Council worlds." A low roar of applause filled the hall. Some clapped, others bowed their heads. Humanity had not only survived the scandal, it had rewritten the law. Lyra turned to Rook, her lips curving into a small smile. "You just made half the galaxy your allies, and the other half your enemies." "Good," Rook replied with a grin. "Keeps things interesting." After the ceremony, the two of them stood on the observation deck overlooking the planet below. The stars hung like frozen fire, and the reflected light from the council spire glowed behind them. "So," Lyra said, leaning on the railing, "what happens now? Peace isn't exactly exciting work." Rook slipped his hands into his coat pockets. "There's no such thing as peace. Not really. Just the quiet moments between storms. And I think another one's coming." Lyra tilted her head. "You mean the quiet forge?" He nodded. "Sales network may be gone, but someone built those chorus nodes. Someone still profiting from chaos." She looked at him for a long moment. "And you're going to hunt them?" "We're going to hunt them," he corrected. She smiled faintly. "Then I suppose our pact isn't finished." Rook turned to face her, the glow of the stars catching the scar on his jaw. "The pact isn't just protection anymore. It's a promise. You and me against the noise." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You humans never do anything halfway, do you? Only when it matters." Outside the viewport, a patrol fleet drifted past, 1,000 lights cutting across the dark. Somewhere beyond them, the remnants of the quiet forge stirred, rebuilding in secret. But for now, in this brief stillness, humanity stood not as prey or pawn, but as proof that even in a galaxy of titans, one fragile world could still roar loud enough to be heard. Rook looked out at the endless expanse of stars and smiled. "Let them come," he said quietly. "We've got the truth on our side." And with that, the stars themselves seemed to burn a little brighter, as if the universe had finally decided to listen.